Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It brings me great pleasure to be moderating this discussion today with some pioneers in the biotechnology industry and some of the most sophisticated investors in life sciences. Just to briefly introduce our panel, we have Robert Nelsen, who's the co-founder and managing director of Arch Venture Partners. We have Christian Angermayer, who is the founder of Apeiron Investment Group. We have Dr. Nina Tandon, who is CEO and co-founder of Epibone. We have Dr. Mussaad Al-Razouki, who is an operating partner at Deerfield Management Company. And finally, we have Rohan Pujara, who's co-founder and general partner at Valhalla Ventures. Thank you all so much for joining us to discuss and answer the question of where is the next unicorn in biotechnology. I think everyone on the stage is more interested in discussing what are the platforms and technologies that are going to drive the next generation of billion-dollar valuations. So Bob, I'd love to start with you. You have, throughout your career with Arch, established over 150 companies, including 47 early-stage investments that are valued at over $1 billion. In 2024 alone, we've witnessed the creation of 39 new biotech unicorns. Do you think that there's true and real innovation underlying a lot of those billion-dollar valuations? And if so, what do you think are the platforms and technologies driving those?
Yeah, I think there is reality amongst the hype. Even when you look at AI meets biotech, there's a lot of hype, but we know it's going to be the future. So when you think about the revolution in data, driving medicine, driving AI application to medicine, that will be a whole new category of kind of real companies. When you think about the revolution in cell therapy, that is, I think in the next 20, maybe 12 months, you'll see some data in cell therapy that will reignite the space. Some people curing tumors, some people curing type 1 diabetes. And I think the revolution in the brain, in drugs for mental health, is accelerating. And then the gene editing revolution, even though we're, I think, at a bottom right now, you'll start seeing many rare diseases really cured. So I kind of think what's going to happen and what is happening is the advent of the curative stage of biotechnology, and the last 20 years have been kind of a palliative stage, and that will drive real value. But I do think we're at kind of a local minimum right now where you have GLPs, and that's everybody wants to talk about that, and then everybody wants to kind of ignore the rest of the world.
Yeah. Does that resonate with you, Mussaad, in terms of the way that Deerfield looks at making bets in the next generation of healthcare companies? How do you distinguish hype from reality and innovation beyond sort of curing disease, which Bob rightly pointed towards, but creating lucrative, lasting business models in the space?
Yeah, I think it's very important. So, you look at innovation, there's innovation on the science side, there's innovation on the access side in terms of improving quality of healthcare services, and you also have innovation in terms of how we reimburse or pay for healthcare. And there's a tremendous movement in the US and around the world to value-based care, and that's actually nothing new to this region. If we go back 7,000 years to the time of Hammurabi, physicians were paid to keep their patients healthy, not to treat patients who are sick. Now, at Deerfield specifically, we invested a lot in setting up relationships with 30 of the top academic medical centers in the US, and we're adding more around the world. We can actually bypass the technology transfer office of these universities and cut the time to market from typically 4 years to around 18 months to 24 months. And we've set up teams within Deerfield of really hardcore, PhD scientists to support on therapeutic development, healthcare services and IT, as well as medtech. So we have our own medtech accelerator where we can develop a quick MVP. We do a lot of the actual research in-house in New York together with partners. So for us, it's really about being on the ground floor of innovation. And I want to echo the comments that Bob did on cell therapy. We're investors in a cell therapy company together, Jaguar Gene Therapy, which is doing tremendous things. right? And happy to get into that a little bit later. But the financial part of the innovation, right? Reimbursing these companies is going to be the challenge. Out of 38 gene and cell therapy companies approved by the FDA, 8 have been pulled off from the market by the companies because the reimbursement hasn't been there. These are drugs that cost $500,000 to $2 million per patient, but there is a very strong correlation that these proteins have to be developed by these genes, otherwise the government or the payer is not going to pay. So again, it's pay for performance, but that's the world we live in today.
Christian, you're not one to kind of shy away from hype. I think you very much embrace it, but you're very good at detecting the signal in the hype. You've founded and established a number of unicorns. You've also, had looked at the other side of the journey in terms of public markets with taking Atai Life Sciences public. Do you see a disconnect between the way that biotech companies are valued in private markets, and then what seemingly looks like decreased investor enthusiasm once they hit the public markets?
Yeah, before I answer that, I want to say one more thing, because Bob said it really well, and it's so important. I think what is changing is biotech for the last 20 years or whatever, 20 years plus, was incredibly low ambitious. We always told, from my colleagues, oh, don't say we try to cure something, we try to make it a little bit better. It was always those incremental steps, instead of saying, look, at the end, you don't want to just do palliative cure for cancer, you want to palliative treatment, you want to cure it. There's still so many things we have in our society, and actually more and more because we get older, which we suffer all from, all society, like cancer, whatever. And I think now we're going to go in a time where also science is there, but also a little bit, I feel, although biotech, in terms of valuation, I come to that in a second, is at a low point, is sort of a little bit the ambition is coming back, and people are saying, no, if I focus on disease X, I really want to cure it, not just make it a little bit better, people live a little bit longer. And then actually what we are very focused on is you can take that one step further, because beyond the cure, why should we, that's a little bit our focus in investments, why should we just wait till people get sick? Why should we, not prevent things much better? Because for example, take cancer, it would be much better if we never get cancer, because once you have it, it's actually pretty shitty, even if you hopefully can cure it somewhere. But then even on top of that is why don't we use biotech to allow ourselves to really upgrade us? You mentioned mental health. I'm always very frustrated. We invest a lot in mental health. I started some mental health companies myself, but again, we're always intervening when people already have depression. I would say, if I would ask in the room, but statistically 15% of you have a mental health issue, depression, anxiety. By the way, it doesn't need to be dramatic, but and we don't talk about it. But if I turn the question around and would say, who of you every day truly feels happy? A lot of you would say, I don't know, I have stressful days. So what I want to say, we can always add more. We can add more happiness, by the way. Who of you doesn't want to be a little bit smarter? Why do we accept that the intelligence we're born with is the one we sort of have to deal with? Because there will be drugs who sort of up-level our intelligence. And why I'm saying that, because we have one drug which changed the game, or one group of drugs, are these GLP-1 drugs, Ozempic, Pujara, whatever, because most people who are taking it are not obese. I'm taking it, and hopefully nobody would say I'm clinically obese, but they're made for clinically obese people. But I'm taking them because they're outsourced discipline, and they make me, in my subjective feeling, better. So, and I think we're entering that time where we're much more daring, long story short, and sort of really using biotech to cure things, and then to even upgrade humans in whatever we want to be upgraded. To your question, capital markets suck at the moment. No, you can't phrase it nicer, because it's really awful. Biotech was hit the hardest from the whole macro trends, interest rates, whatever, which is a huge distortion, because you have private companies which have a valuation, and most or many actually high quality listed companies are trading at cash, so they don't have an enterprise valuation. It's going to change, but I think actually positively said, I think at the moment, listed biotech stocks, the good ones, are maybe the biggest investment opportunity, because they haven't recovered, while tech stocks, crypto, all the other interest rate sensitive stuff has actually recovered. But biotech will follow, so it's a temporary distortion we have to live with.
Agree, well said. I think that there's two main themes that have really governed the conversation around innovation in biotech. I think personalized medicine is a really big one, and obviously underneath that you have platforms like AI and other things. And then you've had big conversation around longevity. I'll get to longevity in a second, but Nina, I want to turn it over to you because I think the company you've built epitomizes personalized medicine in many ways. You've developed a company that reconstructs bone tissue from patients' mesenchymal stem cells, if I've understood it correctly, among other techniques. It's a clinical stage company. I would love for you to share about what you're building, but also to touch on the point that Mussaad raised earlier in terms of scaling these high-tech applications and to turn personalized medicine or boutique medicine to mass medicine that's available to all. What do you see are the barriers to that vis-a-vis what you're building?
Well, I mean, I think the barriers are different at different stages. It's like a video game, being a CEO of a biotech company. And I think, the level one is trying to get enough funding to prove that your technology works in animals, so works on the bench. Level two, because you're not going to warp if this were a video game, is prove that your technology works in living systems, so that means an animal model. Level three is, does it work in humans of subpopulations? And then level four is in the wild, does it work with the general population? And with each of those stages, there's a different set of challenges. And the earlier challenges before, level four is the only time, at least in most economies, where you can sell product and see if there's a business model. Okay, but you have to have, you're responsible as a founder very early on to kind of show that there's line of sight on all of those various downstream steps. So I think, the challenge at the beginning is making sure people understand that this might be science fiction today, but will be science fact tomorrow, and, just prove the technology works. And that's something that's like angel capital. And that's not necessarily the hardest money to raise, but I think it gets, when you find yourselves where we were, and we were not immune, we're looking for curative, treatments for skeletal issues. We grow bone and cartilage from stem cells. In the case of bone, the cells come from yourself. In the case of cartilage, they come from donors. And each of those, so that's a simple way of saying autologous for bone and allogeneic for cartilage. And they have very different implications in terms of scalability, which I think comes into the whole question for that level four of the video game, showing that you can make something at scale and make something where the unit cost economics imply that you don't have to charge $500,000 for your product. And therefore are delivering, and in so doing, by the way, there still can be value-based care if you're delivering more than $500,000 of value to society, but people start to ask more questions and raise more eyebrows when it's that many zeros. Okay, so when we're talking about, what are the challenges that we've faced, I'll just, say that in the biotech winter, high interest rates, high inflation environment where people can make more money with stuffing their cash under a mattress than investing in biotech, there's been a huge challenge because it used to be enough to say, hey, I've de-risked my technology. Now, don't I get a 2x valuation, bump? Not so fast, when there's your competitive companies trading at negative enterprise valuation in the public markets. So what we have found to be our key challenge, and I would say that this is probably something that we share with a lot of other companies in the biotech winter, which is what we've called it, is how do we de-risk the business model? Yeah. It's not enough to de-risk the technology. Yep. We've had to find ways to de-risk the business model. And I think that's why, it's really interesting. COVID, never let a good crisis go to waste, really had a lot of silver linings. And one of them is that I think we understand some tectonic plates had shifted. People, expected that they could, lots of geographies figured out how to do clinical trials. I'd say that's one thing. A lot of people decided, and as healthcare became more globalized and people wanted to seek treatments for themselves, not necessarily trusting their governments to provide them with the best healthcare, started to be more independent in terms of seeking experimental therapies. And so we have been very heartened, and I think there will be a wave of biotech companies doing what we're doing now, which is looking for other geographies outside of the normal players of the last decade. Yeah. And I think that's what really a big upside is potentially for this region, is that we have regulations that are being written today for this moment, with looking for value-based care, but not necessarily looking for the same business model from the past. And so I'm hoping that we can, still not completely disincentivize innovators from doing the hard work, because we can't prove all of those things at level 1 without some tectonic plates shifting, I think, around regulation and enabling technologies around scalability. And I know there was, I think Resilience, one of your companies, has a lot to do with that, bringing, we don't want to have to raise money for infrastructure projects. We just want to raise money for our technology, right? So I think there's a lot of enabling technologies around AI and around biomanufacturing that will help bend the cost curve that, a high tide will raise all boats, hopefully.
Yeah, certainly. I think there's been a few silver linings that emerged from the pandemic vis-a-vis the industry, and I think I'll come back to you later on some of the issues between regulation and making sure that it doesn't slow down innovation, yet we ensure that the process is safe. And we've seen that happen, and regulatory approval timelines be accelerated and condensed in very serious ways during the pandemic. But I want to first turn it to Rohan to talk to us a little bit about some of the bets you've made through Valhalla Ventures. You guys invest across a range of industries, including energy and defense. You've made a few select bets in biotech, in AI and drug design, DNA on a chip technologies, as well as polymathic precision medicine through polymathic AI. These are all kind of all the rage right now in terms of buzzwords, but I'm sure you've made informed bets based on the potential of these technologies. So talk to us a little bit about those.
Yeah, thank you. So I think in biotech, the way we look at it, there's a lot of funds like Arch that do the traditional biotech model really well, and are now exploring new areas in biotech and funding those things. I think generally when we approach an area like biotech, it's not the only thing we do. So we try to understand deeply how the industry works, what types of companies get funded, and then explore kind of how we can be creative in terms of business models and technology, and maybe take more risk than people in the sector might be willing to take. So one area, AI is very hot right now. AI in biotech is, there's entire funds being raised just around AI in biotech. So the question we asked is what are most companies doing in the space? And we saw a lot of companies doing AI for drug design, right? So coming up with entirely new molecules using AI. I think understanding where AI is as a technology, we understood that's probably very hard to do, if not impossible, with the data available today. Anyone who says they're going to design an entirely new molecule and take it to market, or put it in humans, is probably not going to work out. So the company we invested in, Cosign, which you mentioned, rather than designing entirely new molecules, what they do is they look at shelved assets that are owned by big pharma companies, and they find things that are actually already been validated in human safety. So you already know it's safe for humans. And then they buy them for very low cost and then put it into a new indication that they think it can work better for, given data they have. So there you're actually you're using existing clinical data that's already there, and that makes a lot more sense to me from first principles. It makes more sense to use with AI rather than saying, oh, we're gonna design an entirely new molecule from scratch. So that's one example, and generally, we're just trying to see where we can, as an outsider in the space, take more risk than maybe people in the space would be willing to take.
Fascinating. And speaking of risk, longevity is a space that's rife with risk, I think. And we have in the kingdom established the Longevity and Aging Biology Foundation, also very bullish on this space. But you see nowadays every new biotech company and their mother claims to be cracking the longevity code. And some would argue that they're receiving a disproportionate amount of venture funding and other layers of support. How are you guys betting on this space, and what are your thoughts on it?
So our largest investment is in this space in a company called Altos, and I think kind of the leaders in this space in a way are Christian and Revolution and Altos, but Altos views itself as a disease reversal company, not a longevity company. So the question is as you age, it's all about health span. It's all about how lack of disease is what we want. And we would all like to live longer, but we would all like to be younger longer. And I think it's the most exciting area of biology that there is. So the data that will come out in the next few years, we will actually be able to take an old cell, we can already do this in humans, and make it into a young cell. And it has all the characteristics of your young cells when you were 18 or 16, even though it's a 50-year-old cell. And whether it's a skin cell or a kidney cell or part of your knee. And you can imagine like how that changes the health system. Right now we spend trillions of dollars on a reactive health system that doesn't cure you most of the time. Imagine going in and getting a single injection and having your organ become younger and then have the disease that organ had go away. And that's not crazy. It's actually, it's going to happen. And that will fundamentally change healthcare. The opportunity for this region specifically, and specifically here, is whenever there's a fracture and a revolution in an industry, new players can play, especially if they make big bets and think big. And so if the health system changes from a reactive system to a proactive system with prevention and cure, you know, other people can play and own that, especially with regulatory innovation and some of the other things we've been talking about when you're rewriting the regs for the new system. And then we start bringing our innovation here instead of bringing it, you know, somewhere else or being bogged down in the US. So I think it's the most exciting area of biology, and I think we're all going to be healthier longer within our lifetimes, right? This is single-digit year stuff, not decade stuff.
No, same. Like I think first of all, like if you say longevity receives a lot of funding, longevity is not in competition with other biotech. It's a very fluent sort of thing, like because like a lot of diseases, like in order to not die, you need to cure a lot of things. Like meaning the good thing is actually.
So then is longevity a standalone category,
I would say
right? Because
almost exactly. It's very hard to say almost we all do it because I think it underpins the ambition. And I think so this is great that we're all talking about longevity, which means pushing out both health span, so staying healthy for longer, but also lifespan. So I hope we gradually will, and I'm very convinced actually, we gradually will live longer and longer. But on that way, we need to solve many normal things like cancer. And then when we get older, there will be maybe when we all get more than 100, like there will be new diseases we don't even know about yet in mass. Like so, but a short version is I think longevity is a good, in a positive meaning, buzzword, which is underpinning the ambition, what I just said before, the biotech industry is getting back to really cure things and make a real difference and not just an incremental difference.
yes, yes.
And it's like, as Bob said, like it's a total addressable market of 100% of the population. Like we all aging. And like I would say, whoever says something different, we all like culturally so lie to ourselves, say, oh my God, we get wiser. Yes, I want to get wiser every day, but I don't want to age. It sucks. Like, I want to be back in my 20s with my body, and I want to have the brain of now. That's the perfect killer combination. So, and most likely everybody will secretly agree, maybe not say it out loud.
Yeah. I think a lot of the innovation that drives everything that everyone has mentioned is, very patient, early stage funding and collaboration with, basic science and researchers. And I think, Mussaad, I'd love to hear from you about the partnerships that Deerfield has struck with institutes like the Broad. I know there was a commitment of $50 million and a venture partnership with Harvard of around $100 million. And even though the stages that you're funding in are also very patient capital, I think that's as patient as it gets and what really drives innovation into the industry. Talk to us a little bit about the value of those commitments.
Well, thankfully you don't have to be as patient as before. So we have some great success stories out of our innovation funds, specifically out of the Broad with Matt Scher's lab at Harvard. And it's a public company now. It's a company called Nuvalent. We did the entire seed round as Deerfield. We did the entire Series A. We syndicated the B. Company went public raised 800 million from the public markets, and today the company's worth 7 billion, and that was a 5-year journey. And because of our model, we still own 40% of the company. So this one investment has paid back our entire first health innovation fund at a 2x, right? And we have many more of those kind of examples in the pipeline. I'll also add that we also do a lot of later stage as well. So we invest across the entire healthcare spectrum. We partner with a lot of the managed care organizations to create businesses on the services side, on the insurance tech side, to try and actually solve problems for them that they don't have the time or the staff to do, but they can actually support us in terms of the capital. And we have very creative structures in terms of calls and puts with these managed care organizations and insurers to just create a flexible model that they can essentially buy or we can put to them at any point in time. And in terms of the early stage stuff, what I do want to mention, just add a different paradigm to the discussion, is we've spent a lot to bring in some top scientific talent into Deerfield. So we brought in Professor Matthew Nelsen from GSK. He was our top geneticist. And he is part of our functional genomics team there that is now working on overlaying genotypic data with phenotypic data to come up with potential drug discovery knockouts, human knockouts that could lead to drug discovery. And we also recently brought on Professor Frank Nestle from Sanofi, who again has done tremendous work in immunology to run a lot of the internal programs we're developing at Deerfield. So there's a lot that is happening, and definitely I think it's a very exciting time to be in healthcare, to be in biotech. As my co-panelists mentioned, the public markets have really undervalued a lot of the public listed companies, and I think this is a tremendous time to get into the next wave.
Thanks for sharing that, Mussaad. I know we're close to time, so I would just want to share one final closing question, get maybe a 30-second response from each of you. So if you as leaders in this sector were charged with building an ethical framework, and a Hippocratic oath for biotechnology that truly puts the best interests of all humanity ahead of simply generating the next blockbuster drug, what one core principle would underpin that oath and shape your decision making? We'll start with Bob and go this way.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think to me, I would modify it to say, first, do no relative harm, right? So the idea that do no harm is too conservative, right? We need to take more risk, right? I think it's really, I would rethink the system and the oath to be more about preventing disease, right? The system of training doctors is just purely reactive. Your doctor doesn't really know anything about prevention. ChatGPT-4 knows more about prevention than the average doctor today. So I think I don't know what one word it would be, but prevention, I guess, is the prevention of disease is more important than anything.
Yeah, very similar, like was beautifully phrased. Like, I think we have to loosen up actually drug approval processes because they take far too long. Like, it can take 15 years. Think about it, how much science has changed the last 15 years, and some drugs which are coming to market now have been invented 15 years ago or longer, and that's too long. And yes, the FDA and all the other agencies had something good in mind, like protecting people, do no harm, but it became overly protective, and by actually being so slow, millions of people die because medications who will somewhere come to market are coming so slow to market and people are dying. So actually rethink, in a do no relative harm way, it was very well phrased, the whole drug approval process.
Yeah, I just want to second what you said, let health blossom instead of do no harm. And I think that the idea of bodily sovereignty and giving people the right, should they so choose and make the choice themselves as a patient, who, by the way, is not patient for their own cure, to maybe allow themselves to take a different risk-benefit profile for themselves in servitude of science. And I think open ourselves up in an era of personalized medicine to N-of-1 trials. We haven't innovated clinical trials since the book of Daniel, to go back to our roots here. I think N-of-1 trials mean we can allow for noisy data sets, and we can allow for N-of-1, and if people choose to put themselves at risk for the benefit of others, I think we should allow that.
Absolutely. That's actually a similar point. But my issue with the Hippocratic Oath always has been it starts with "O by Apollo," right, the sun god. And when I swore my Hippocratic Oath, it was "O by Allah."
Yes.
right? And I think that's the first thing that should be changed. But just to add on Nina's point, real world evidence is what I would put in there. And the FDA has gotten better. We saw that with the Alzheimer's drugs, right? Pretty expensive drugs, $50,000 a year. But essentially, even though the panel of 17 experts, neuroscientists and neurologists didn't agree with Biogen's submission, they decided to just essentially roll the dice and collect real world evidence because there is no alternative. It's, Tina, there is no better alternative, right? So this, I think, is very important to allow more flexibility in doing these real-world trials, especially for orphan diseases and types of genetic diseases where there is no cure, frankly.
Please, Rohan.
Yeah, I agree with everyone else. I think that there needs to be change in how drugs are approved and how things come to market. I don't think we take enough risk. People should be able to try things. That's why we were talking before this about the Honduras program, and like a company like Nina's shouldn't have to come to a different part of the world just to try to work as a business, right? We should have that risk tolerance all over the world. And I also think I think as investors, we should just be more ambitious and actually try to solve problems and go and take more risk on longer time horizons if it's actually going to cure a disease or make people happier versus trying for these incremental 10 or 20% better ideas.
On those very inspiring notes, please join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their insights today. Thank you very much.